And we are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another amazing week of food safety, food quality, fantastic freaking food products that everybody loves to eat and enjoy. And if you work in food safety and quality assurance, guess what? Nobody notices if you're doing a good job. But guess what? Joe and I, wrong way. Joe and I, we know. And we're telling you, thank you very much. We appreciate all you do. If you're new to the show, welcome. Pull up a chair. This is the Food Safety Chat live and every Friday at this time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern. We go live on YouTube and LinkedIn, and we have a conversation with you around a food safety topic. And that's what's make this fun, because this is not a lecture. This is not all kinds of presentations. This is us sitting down one-on-one and hopefully conveying a little bit of information that lets you think about what you're doing, maybe improve a little bit, because that's all we can really do, right? Is that incremental improvement. And if you pull something out of a conversation you have that lets you do what you're doing a little bit easier, a little bit faster, a little bit better, that's what we're doing. So with that, one of the things that we love to do here on the chat is we put in here, everybody, where in the world you are at. I am in Loveland, Colorado. We're going to have another beautiful day here today. And of course, if you're a regular guest on the chat, you recognize the gentleman sitting next to me, Joe Laino, who is with Comprehensive Food Safety, and he is their compliance manager and senior food safety consultant. Joseph, how are you doing today?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you? It's 10 o'clock. I feel like it's 6 in the morning. I'm so tired today. I was Friday tired by Tuesday. I live in a little town called outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. When I say I'm in the Charlotte metro, that's now become like an hour's radius from Charlotte. Metro's growing so big.
Now, when we were doing prep earlier this week, it was raining like crazy. Still raining?
It has no, not at this moment, but it's only 10 o'clock. My grass is literally up to just below my knee. I haven't cut it in a month because of all the rain. And every time it starts to dry, it's supposed to rain again. So I think when I'm done with you, I'm going outside to cut the grass.
So it's gonna be one of these.
Yeah. I got one of those zero turns, and it starts bogging down, and so. It's okay, because come August, when we haven't had rain in 5 weeks, it'll be tumbleweed. So I guess it all balances out.
As my friend used to say, it all comes out in the wash, right?
It all comes out in the wash.
So everybody, please, put in the comments. Let us know that you're here and you're joining us. Say hello and let us know where in the world you're at. So one of the things that we do here on the chat here is we start out, and sometimes I get too excited to start and I forget this. So we are going to have a drink of your favorite beverage. So join Joe and I for a nice. Ta-da. Very good. And so a little bit of a disclaimer here from last week, Joe. So last week, Peter Holtman was my guest, and Peter lives in Sydney, Australia. And number one, so Peter, huge guy in food safety worldwide. And we had prepped the show and everything else. Now, number one, right? So I owe Peter at least a couple of beers the next time I see him. That's midnight for him. Midnight for the show. And so I'm like, dude, are you sure about this? We can move it later in the day. We can, crazy. He's like, no, I'm used to this. Conference calls worldwide. You get used to this. Like, okay. So 15 minutes before the show, he's not on. And I'm like, uh-oh. Okay. So I send him a message. Hey, Peter, everything okay? No response. 5 minutes before the show, I'm starting to panic. And the show starts and still no Peter. So I'm like, okay, I'll give him a little bit. So I kind of explained to everybody what was going on, that we were waiting. And I was very worried. I'm like, geez, I hope Peter's okay. I hope something serious didn't happen, or something, because he's extremely professional. This isn't like him at all. This is the only time this ever has happened in the 4 years I've been doing this chat now. And he didn't come on. So we spoke for about 10 minutes. I let everybody go. I didn't want to waste everybody's time. Did hear him after the fact. Sure enough, 5 freaking minutes before the show, massive internet outage. And he was visiting family. Nothing. He had absolutely nothing. No way to get a hold of me. Extremely apologetic. And these things happen, right? This is technology, and these things happen. And he's very apologetic. But the best part of this, Joe, is this: is and now I'm going to lord that over Peter for years, He's like, "Oh, Brian, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, forget about it.
I'm sure.
So it's gonna, I'm just gonna pull that out a little card anytime that I need.
It's just like the last class I taught was a PCQI class, and it was supposed to start at 8:30. Like 8:29, my lights go out in my house. Like, you gotta be kidding me.
We've all kind of gotten used to this, and all these different variables within our lives. So I would imagine too today, right, is a major travel day for people. This was the Food Safety Summit this week. Wish I could have been there. It would have been awesome. Seeing great pictures from everybody who's attended. Looked like it was a really good conference. I'm bummed out that I missed it. But we've got people from all over the world as usual. So Sanal's down in Georgia, Kira in Seattle, Mr. Kramer in Lubbock, and Jens in France. Awesome. I love that. So I worked for Bon Grand Cheese, and I also worked for Group Lactalis. So strong dairy presence and, of course, cheese in France. So thanks for joining us. Appreciate that. So with that, of course, Joseph, time for the dad joke.
I must be in trouble. Me, Joseph.
Everybody ready for the dad joke? All right, here we go. Joe, why does the Norwegian Navy put barcodes on the sides of all their ships?
Gee, Brian, I don't know. Why do they?
Well, it's really quite simple, Joe. They do that so they can scan the Navy in.
That has got to be the worst one I've heard. The sad part is I wonder where you got that from.
You gave it to me. So if there's anything to blame, if anybody doesn't like the dad joke,
it's my fault.
That guy right there.
200%. But actually, it's my kid's fault, because last year for Father's Day, they bought me a 1-page per day dad joke calendar, and I am rifling them off every day. They just ignore my texts now. It's actually quite sad.
There's nothing better than a good bad dad joke.
Sure.
So I'm excited about our show today, and Joe, you are the perfect person to do this show with. And as we were prepping for this, we're like, okay, what's something kind of cool? So what we're doing today is we're almost kind of doing like a TV show, kind of like a roundtable, right? Where we have a topic, and then we're taking sides on this topic and talking about it. And yeah, it's going to be kind of fun doing this and batting this back and forth. But really, there's a purpose behind this as well. In that, one of the things, Joe, in your role as an auditor, and when you put on that hat and you visit facilities, a lot of times we can sense when you go into a plant if there's going to be a problem, because a lot of times the food safety person, the quality team, the people who are responsible for the systems have a very black and white view of things, and they end up fighting with their teammates around this all the time, because you have to do this because SQF 2.1.2 says that you need to do this. And that's not a convincing argument. And one of the things that we talk about here on the chat quite a bit, Joe, is there's food safety and there's food quality. And a lot of times people, and I even saw this in the comments getting ready for this chat, is people get those things confused. And there's a area in between where people think that they're the same, and they're not. Food safety is very black and white when it comes to the actual decision-making process and how you set up your programs. Food quality is a business process where you need to have your systems and programs and your data in place so that you can make a risk-based decision relative to how you're managing that issue. Two very different things. And a lot of times those get confused. And today we're kind of illustrating that with these questions. You would think that these are pretty black and white questions, but they're not.
No.
And you need to be able to understand both sides. If you're a negotiator, and we all are in food safety and food quality, if you're a negotiator, you need to be able to understand both sides of the equation of, okay, here's my position and what I want. The person sitting opposite me in this potential discussion, what's their viewpoint? What's their objective? What are they getting out of this? What are they looking for? What do they consider acceptable or negotiable, or how do I look at these type of things? And so if you're the quality manager in the plant and you're sitting down to talk with the plant manager about an issue, see their perspective. You're only going to be able to reach a mutually acceptable conclusion on these type of issues if you understand the other person's viewpoint and you're able to communicate to them your viewpoint. And if you're successful in that, guess what? Your career is going to do really well, isn't it?
It's back to your point about it being black and white. I will agree that food safety is black and white. I think it has to be black and white.
Yeah.
Quality is nothing but gray.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of variables when it comes to acceptability for quality. Case in point was my little car breakdown I was alluding to yesterday. Yeah. Here I am driving one of the most highly rated cars in the, it's a Honda. Like, it's all these unbelievable reviews, right? And here I am trucking up along I-26 yesterday, and the heat shield just falls off. Like, zip ties fix that problem, but I've never had a car where that's happened before. Mm-hmm. So never mind on I-26, where I was, of course, just doing the speed limit. I was not exceeding the speed limit at all. No. A speed limit is the law. But I think we get confused between what food safety is, where the lines end, where the lines cross.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pros and cons to taking hard lines to one versus the other. So I agree 200%.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, to kind of illustrate that, let's look at something like product seal. So if you have a bag of shredded cheese, let's say, and you got a seal that's not very good in that bag of shredded cheese, and air gets in, mold starts growing. Yeah. Going to get a complaint. Consumer's going to throw it out. You're going to have to figure out why that happened. Are people going to get sick from that? Probably not, right? Now, if you have that same seal issue in a can, right, and now you've got the potential for botulism,
right?
Very different parameters, and you need to, and that's why your risk assessment and understanding the variables with your product specific to your plant and your company and your risk profile are so important. And right, so you need to be able to figure out food safety, food quality, where do these things belong? And so that's kind of what we're going to do with our conversation here. So with that, so what we're going to do here for our conversation, we have 5 topics. So we got a ton to cover here. So we're going to state a position, and these are things that we hear in the chat and all over LinkedIn. We hear these topics all the time. One person is going to take a pro position on this statement. The other person is going to take a con position on this statement. And we want interaction on this. Jump in. We want everybody to jump in on this and join the conversation. And at the end of this we'll kind of talk about this a little bit, and we'll move on to the next topic. So it's kind of be a lightning round. And so with this huge disclaimer, the opinions stated in this broadcast are not necessarily the opinions of the people presenting those opinions, right? We're just taking a side.
Or their employer.
Or their employer, right? I'm even going to put this in here. These are not necessarily...
Or their employer. Or future employers, shall we say, as well, because you never know. Well, Joe said...
Yeah, exactly. A little clip on the internet. No, these are just...
Well, Brian...
We're playing roles here, right? And so we could reverse this, right? Because part of this is, with this, it's like, well, which side do you want? Well, I'll take this side, you take that side. Okay, right? That could easily be reversed. And that's a good sign. And this gets back to our initial prep on this conversation here, is you need to be able to understand both sides. So I think enough disclaimer.
Let's do it.
Are you ready? All right. Ding, ding. Let's go. So, all right. Position statement number 1. Staff cuts at the FDA and USDA with the current administration are going to significantly hurt food safety, right? We're seeing this all over the internet, right? LinkedIn, there's people lamenting that these staff cuts are going to be very bad. So here's the pro position that I'm going to be taking on this one. And this will be clear on the next one, right? We won't have this explanation necessarily. So, okay, Joe, obviously, right? Obviously, this position is true, right? These agencies absolutely play a critical role in food safety. And without these agencies and the funding that they get, we're in serious trouble. What do you think?
Next. There is no evidence. There is no statistical evidence to defend the fact that more frequent inspection, more regulatory inspections cuts down recalls.
I mean, go back in time, Joe, and look at, I mean, the jungle and Sinclair Lewis and the absolute craziness that was food manufacturing before the government got involved.
We can go back in time to just last year. There was a recall last year over a listeria outbreak where 10 people died, and that place was under government and state oversight.
Well, that's true, but that goes back to my point again. This is because these agencies just don't have enough funding. They're understaffed. They don't have enough time to cover this information. They're doing the best that they can. If anything, we should be giving more money to these agencies because they're the ones that protect food safety.
Every advance that we've experienced in our levels of food safety in this country have come from private industry taking the lead. We can't wait for regulatory to police us, nor should we ever have to wait for regulatory police to police us. Where is our sense of integrity to do the right thing without being told to do the right thing? So,
well, time and time again, we see these companies that don't follow that. Peanut Corporation of America, where they deliberately defraud, and they're out there killing people.
Why they were under federal inspection. And look, if people are going to do what they want to do, regardless of what, I was on kind of driving home yesterday, and there I am on the interstate, and all of a sudden I'm not following the speed limit. I'll be the first guy to say that. What did the policeman make me slow down? No. So the rules the regulations are only as good as how much we're willing to obey them and how much we're willing to abide by them. We can't rely on regulatory to police us. We have to do it ourselves.
Well, I think you're kind of making my point though then too. So we have bad players that are out there that are going to cheat.
End of the day, we're on the same side. It's hard. It's hard to take that con line too long.
You need the cops to get those bad players like you that are out there speeding like crazy, man.
Yeah, but there's 35,000 people out there, and two regulators. So what does that mean? You have the 34,998 are gonna. We have to be able to do it ourselves. There's no evidence to prove that more regulation controls things any better.
Well, it's kind of the not seen element, right? So it's kind of like if the regulators weren't there, it'd be much, much worse. Right? We just can't see that because there's no comparison.
You're wrong. Next. That's usually how the argument.
That's fine.
You're wrong. Next.
Right. So as part of this conversation, right? So is that what do you guys think? What arguments would you have pro or con for that type of a question? So it's interesting with these type of things and you can picture this as right. Joe and I could easily flip that and argue the other side of what we just did. It's because we understand both sides of the issue.
Absolutely. And, to every issue that we're going to raise here in this chat today, as well as everything else in life, there really is at least two positions. And it doesn't matter whether you believe you're right or you're wrong. It's your position. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, although I don't necessarily have to hear it. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody's entitled to feel the way they feel. Does it mean you're right? I don't know.
But what I loved about your argument and what you did is you said, okay, that's an interesting position, Brian. Show me the data that it actually improves food safety.
And I would agree that cutting the funding for FDA and USDA is not going to help the situation. But I do believe we cannot rely on them. We can't. And I think we learned that with the PCA scandal. And I think we've learned that with Boar's Head. We cannot rely on a government agency as good of a job as they do. And I believe me, I know lots of people, particularly on the FDA side. I know lots of state auditors here in the Carolinas who, they are deputized by FDA. They carry FDA credentials, and they're good people, and they really do a good job. But to your point, to the pro part, we need 30,000 more of them, and that's just not going to happen. We know it.
No.
So,
and it goes back to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say we can't as much. Now we're being serious. As good of a job as they do under immense staffing shortages, all the more reason why we can't rely exclusively on regulatory to police us.
Right.
We got to do it ourselves. We know what the laws are. We know what the rules are. We know what SQF says. We know what BRC says. And SQF and BRC almost, I don't want to say identically, but they are exceptionally close to FSMA requirements.
Yeah.
243 in SQF, the HACCP. Supplier approval in SQF is almost identical to Subpart G in FSMA. So, we can make the argument to say, well, if we're compliant with that, it's a big dark pile of mud, and we've got to sneak our way through it.
Yeah, I'll kind of end it here with what Sanal's saying here, right? So so. Oh, wrong comment. That's not the one I wanted. Here we go. Is that FDA is responsible for protecting public health? Right. That's the normal viewpoint. But it's kind of like the cop analogy. I think works really well. Would you want in your neighborhood, a policeman posted outside your house? Right? No, it's not practical. It would be incredibly expensive. The best defense you have for your home and protecting your home are your neighbors. Right? Your neighbors you're all watching out for each other. If something goofy is going on at your house and the neighbor sees it, right, they're going to let the cops know. The cops in a lot of ways are a reactionary force. Right? It's a bit snarky, and you hear these comments, right? If a murder occurs, the police are there to put the chalk outline around the body, right? They're not going to stop the murder. They're going to investigate the murder. We're trying. This is the analogy here with food safety, right? We're trying to prevent the murder. The best way to do that is locally. Right, through your own monitoring and your own programs, and then hopefully you don't need to put a chalk outline around the recall. Fun. That was fun. I love this.
Kira raises a good point about inspections are based on risk level, and while that's true and that's noble, I think the number was about one third of all food processors are defined as high risk. So, that does not mean that the other 2/3 don't deserve attention. You and I probably have 250 years in the industry together because we're as old as dirt. It's been the same since I got into the industry, and it hasn't gotten better, nor will it get better. So therefore, we have to take it upon ourselves. There's just no choice.
Beautiful segue, which leads into our next proposition, Joe.
Well, recalls are designed to catch problems before they go out. Our systems are much better than they used to be. And without these enhanced systems, recalls would be even higher.
Well, I see what you're saying there, Joe, for this, but I don't agree with that. This is all speculation. Right? Because recalls should be decreasing, but they're not. So from my viewpoint, all of these systems and programs that we're putting in place aren't doing a darn thing. They're not helping at all.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, just in the span of the last 15 to 20 years when GFSI really took took foot in food safety, we've seen such an increase in the number of recalls only because we're getting better at identifying it. They're without these identifiers, we'd have even more. Just a fact.
Well, it almost goes back to our previous conversation around FDA, where I was saying that you can't tell. So does it really? I mean, we go through version after version after version of these standards, and it's almost more like a business now than anything else, that they're creating all these systems and programs. And I don't really see any change in this. And a lot of times, all these different standards that we have, it gets really confusing. And a lot of times these recalls that we're doing now too aren't really beneficial to the public, right? They're just confusing people too. And it's really not beneficial because there's not a good mechanism for letting the consumers know. And it just seems like this is all just kind of speculation and we're going through the motions. You and I have been in the business a long time, and we've gone through multiple reiterations of programs, right? Going back to GMA. Remember GMA Safe, right? That was the precursor to GFSI. Yeah. And before that, there was another program and there was another program. It just goes on and on. I don't think these systems are really doing a darn thing.
Well, imagine how much worse we'd be if we didn't have anything. You know, what little we have, and as hard as we try to follow them, imagine how many more recalls there would be without them. And you know, we should be lucky we have the systems we have in place.
So back to your prior point in our last conversation.
On this one's hard, man. Let me tell you.
Yeah. What's your data on that? You know, you're speculating just like on the last one. And you asked me, I'm asking you, what's your data showing that recalls would be higher if we didn't have these systems?
Well, it's just there, Brian. You have to take my word for
it. I mean, we trust in these things. So I mean, to your example with your Honda and the shield coming off the bottom of the car and making a lot of noise. Could have been a variety of different sources for that. It could have been the mechanic who did a bad job when you did the oil change and you didn't put the bolts in correctly, right? That's not Honda's fault. Or is it? Now, should Honda have a program in the training system and put in new standards for training of that technician at the local dealership or the Jiffy Lube to make sure that they know how to put heat shields on correctly?
Yeah. Yeah. So much for that 5-star rating.
Yeah.
No, this is a topic that I hear a lot it's if we're auditing and we're auditing and we're auditing, why are there more and more recalls? And it's a fair statement. And both the pro and the con in this topic have real valid arguments. Okay. I was doing an audit a few weeks ago, and this person had an axe to grind in general. And she says, well, you know, if you were as good as you are, or if you were as good as what did she say? If you were as good as I've heard you are, why are there so many recalls? I said, the recalls are my fault. I didn't know that, but thanks for letting me know. You know, part of it is, and I think number one, there's more visibility on recalls than ever before. Number two, we have to report them now, where 10 years ago, the reportable registry wasn't there 15 years ago. You know, my wife and I were talking, and we're both, you know, of that age where when we were born, there were 4 billion people on the planet. Now there's 8. So I'm 60. So in just 60 years, be quiet, Sanal. Don't laugh at me as to how old I am. I hear her chuckling. I hear her chuckling down I-85. You know, just in the past 60 years, our population's doubled. Well, the number of food plants hasn't doubled to create more food. So we're being forced to run harder, run faster, run longer, run leaner, greater demand on profitability. That comes with cutting corners. You cutting corners, it leads to recalls. So it's the whole, like, you know, the dog chasing its tail kind of analogy. Right. So either side of this topic, the pros and cons are valid.
Right. And I think an important part of this second topic that we talked about here is what I was verbalizing is probably what your senior leadership is thinking, right? Hey, I'm spending all this money, food safety guy. I'm not seeing any results out of this. Well, how come things aren't getting better? They may not say that directly to your face, but that's what they're thinking, which then will translate into less money, less budget, less resources.
But they're not getting worse either, right?
Yeah, so, true.
Glass is half full, half empty. Look at it however you want.
Yep. So moving on, topic number 3. So Joe, consumers, our consumers, the people that we love, that are our families, the people that we care about, they don't have a role in food safety. Consumers should expect everything that we're talking about here so far. Everything that we do in food safety is meant to make sure that the consumers have that expectation that their food is always going to be safe. And that's period. There's no other side to that conversation.
So the consumer has no skin in the game? The consumer has no responsibility?
Nope.
So if you jump through hoops to produce a safe, wholesome product, in the meantime, it gets the food line, and the 16-year-old out there who doesn't know his ass from his elbow lets the milk sit on the loading dock in July for an hour before they put it. That's whose fault is that?
That's your fault. You should have created systems and programs to make sure that doesn't happen.
It's people are going to get sick. It doesn't make a difference. So
All right. So you're going to put a disclaimer on the product that says, warning, warning. If you drink this, you're going to die because of the dumbass kid on the dock.
Could be.
Wow.
Could be.
So nobody's going to be able to eat anything then. All of the trust I have in the products is out the window, right? Because I have an expectation that product should always be safe.
Yeah. It's where does it end? Where does one responsibility end and another start?
Right. With you, it's your fault.
That's true. That's off the joke. That's usually the truth. So here's another great example of life is gray. Okay. Yeah. We as manufacturers go through hoops. And again, Sanal and I go back a ways, and I know who she works for and the industry that she's in. And, she's in probably one of the highest risk kinds of industries. Okay. And, it's where does my responsibility as a high risk producer end, and where does the consumer's responsibility take over? And it's somewhere between the factory and the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Every summer here, my local grocery store, I don't buy milk from them, because from about now till October, I buy milk, I bring it home, it's sour in 2 days. And it's your refrigerator. And it's the only thing in my refrigerator going bad is your milk.
Yeah.
I just don't buy it there anymore, because I know they probably leave it on the back dock for 2 hours till they get around to loading it. The milk hits 50, 60 degrees, gets cooled back down to 40, and there goes the shelf life.
Yeah.
So it's I think everybody has some skin in the game. The manufacturer, the producer, there's a reason why the sanitary transport laws are in effect. And each grocery store has an obligation to get that stuff, get the cold, keep the hot stuff hot, the cold stuff cold. We're all going to be fine. And everything else in between, don't worry about it. If you leave the can of corn out there for 3 days, it's canned corn. But it's the perishable stuff that has to be handled better, and we're not doing it.
Yeah, I think it's a variance of what is out in the marketplace of the customer is always right. It doesn't matter. They're always right. They always get what they want. And in what we do in food manufacturing, that extends as well for us to the retailers. So to your point, how many times do you go into a grocery store? And I've seen Dr. Detweiler post on this, right? He's traveling and he'll check temperatures in the coffin cases or the stand-up cooling units at those little sandwich stands or whatever that are in the walkways that you buy a quick meal. These things are 50, 60 degrees. And he'll be like, hey, that thing's too hot. You're going to start growing stuff. And the guy's kind of like, okay. Yeah, you need to let your boss know that they need to fix that. He says, and I came back to that airport at the end of the week and nothing had been done. Right? That link in the chain. And that's the really hard part. And so part of this is, and I think really, and you remember this too, Joe, back with the original inceptions of HACCP, is, okay, we have to control every potentiality, every hazard within the system, everything that we can think of, we have to control. What could happen at the farm? Oh, a crazy person could come to the farm and open the lid on the bulk tank and throw in some pesticides. Oh, yeah, right. That's a risk. How are we going to control that? Well, we have to start testing for pesticides. So you started ending up with this giant list of hazards to control and CCPs, and nobody could do anything because it was beyond crazy. Yeah. So that phrase in the risk assessments is so important, right? Reasonably likely to occur.
I was just going to say. Part of that, your level of paranoia sometimes dictates what is reasonable. Right. Yes, I'm sitting here, and when the wind's blowing out of the south, I am under the takeoff path of the planes leaving Charlotte, because Charlotte's airport's runways run due north and south. They take off to the south, they hook a right, they go over my house. By the time they're over my house, they're at 10,000 feet. Because every now and then I'll see guys jumping out of airplanes, parachutes above my house, and it gives me the willies. So is it possible that a chunk of blue ice could fall out from one of these airplanes and hit my... Yes. Is it possible? Sure. Is it possible that an asteroid is going to come out of the sky tomorrow and land on my back? Sure. Is it reasonable? No. Right. I see... you talked about hazard analysis. That's a good example. I see so many companies identifying botulism as a hazard when receiving canned ingredients. I'm like, well, why would you elevate that to a hazard level? It's not reasonably likely to occur. We have 100 different controls in place, retort process. Be reasonable, and you know, it's always a joke in the auditing world. We are reasonable. But again, this is now 3 for 3 on these topics about it could go either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so I think part of this is what can you do? And this is something we talked about in the chat too, Joe, is think about things outside of your bubble, what you can control, what you can't control. Are there things that you can do in that supply chain downstream to educate? If you're seeing crazy complaints on your fluid milk coming from your plant, from consumers for spoilage, talk with your retailers. Say, hey guys, what are you doing to make sure that you're getting that product into refrigeration right away? That's really important to get outside of that bubble. And I think that's part of the message here, right? Is we're talking supply chain, right? Don't get locked in your systems. And that's kind of what this whole risk assessment piece is all about here as well. So you got to think about those things in those terms. So do consumers have a role in food safety? Heck yeah. Closing issue that I remember on this one before we move on to the next topic is ConAgra, chicken pot pies, frozen chicken pot pies.
Yeah.
There was contamination found in those pot pies. Part of their defense was that consumers don't eat these raw. Consumers cook pot pies, and the cooking process kills any pathogens that might be present. So we're good. And the judge said, nope, you cannot rely on the consumer to manage your food safety. You have to send it to them in a condition that it's safe. You can't delegate that to your consumer.
I was with a site recently, and they make a bakery item, and they go, well, it requires it's a raw dough. Like, well, it requires further baking by the further processing, so we don't have any CCPs. I'm like, huh? What? Yeah, well, no, it's all on the shoulders of the end user. Really? Really? You sure you want to take that stance? So yeah, I think when it comes to food safety, from farm to fork, everybody's got a little skin in the game.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so topic number 4, Joe.
Let's marketing claims, and this is one of my personal faves. Marketing claims are good, and they drive sales, because without sales, there's no revenue, and without revenue, there's no salaries. So marketing is good, and companies need to find unique ways to create more food. May not be real food, but it's food, and we have to use all kinds of technology and genetically modify stuff to feed the masses. That's our responsibility.
Oof, marketing claims. Oh my God, right? So no.
High fat, high fiber, low cal, gluten-free.
Right, and as consumers, I hate them, right? We look at these packages and we can't make sense of anything. They're just trying to one-up each other with all these claims and all these certifications, and organic, gluten-free, allergen-free. Now with this, here's the one I love, Joe. Try and defend this one for your marketing claims. Superfood. This is a superfood, right? As a consumer, you're going, oh, wow, a superfood. I want a superfood, and you buy that. How did that work out with TerraFlower?
Listen. Everybody wants to harp on TerraFlower. It was a one-off problem. Okay, all right. It was a one-off problem. We made a little mistake. That multi-grain bread really is healthy for you. Okay. After all, it's got more than one grain. Yes, we still bleach it, and yes, it's air in a bag, but it's multi-grain.
Well, and look at where we're going through right now with claims and what's allowed in food and what's not in the government right now. What used to be labeled, to your point, healthy just a few years ago is probably not healthy. So the government used to tell us that, don't eat fats. Get rid of all these fats. Fats are bad. Eat all these carbohydrates and you'll be healthy. And here's our nice little pyramid that we created, and we endorse this and we love this. And okay, marketing people, go to town. To your point, all these claims. Now it looks like all these claims are garbage.
Hydrogenated oils. It's just oil that we've put some hydrogen in to make it firm, easier to transport. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, Armentrout. Okay.
These marketing. So part of the problem, this is why in food safety we have so many issues. And back to the earlier point of recalls, is the marketing people, these things that they're doing, they bring in the money, like you just talked about. They're bringing in the money. And the marketing people have the ear of the CEO, and they're going into the CEO and saying, okay, listen, here's what we're going to do with this marketing plan, CEO, and you're going to be absolutely amazed. We're going to go revenue by 75% in 3 months. And now I'm the food safety guy coming in going, this claim is potentially problematic, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to. Who's going to win that?
What difference does it make? We're selling product.
But if there's a claim on the package that says soy-free, I can't guarantee soy-free. I can only test to a certain level, 5 ppm. That's it.
That's close enough. It's fine. It sells.
Well, what happens?
And the argument is that if sales are, and I hate this word, if sales are robust, everybody's happy, right? The shareholder is happy. The CEO is happy because the shareholders are happy. Therefore, the board of directors isn't up his butt. Everybody's happy, right? It's a win-win-win. So what if red dyes aren't necessarily healthy? Do you want to eat a box of all white Fruit Loops? No, I want my colors and my flavors, and otherwise it's not a Fruit Loop, it's just a loop. So
so we hear this, right? And this is the food company argument, going and lobbying the senators and the congressmen. Now, part of the position, and this is what I'm seeing on LinkedIn and things like this, is they don't do this in Europe. A lot of the things we do in the US, they don't do in Europe. And I'm seeing a lot of comparisons, Joe, side by side of labels of products in the US and Europe, and they're very different. And the product's still good. Product's healthier, arguably.
I don't know.
It's just money. It's just money.
British Fruit Loops. I don't know. So I have to try them. No, but again, this is one of the other grays, right?
Yeah.
Because marketing is never about food safety. Marketing is about trying to promote an item, high fiber, and there are actually criteria for what is when you can declare high fiber, excellent source of fiber, good source of fiber, there's all statistical information, data points to say you have to have this level to call it high fiber. I was shopping a few weeks ago, and I looked at it was a package of store level, the store brand chopped meat, and it said on it British Fruit Loops, and it said gluten free. I'm like, well, it's ground beef. I hope it's gluten free.
Yeah.
And then somebody said, well, what happens if the cow eats grain? And I'm like, it's not. Don't, just stop. Okay.
Yeah.
It's meat. It's gluten free. And then I saw on a package of fresh fish, gluten free. It's a fish. I certainly hope it's gluten free. Yeah. So marketing is there to sell, and that's their job. And that's okay, because without one of my very close friends, he's a VP of sales for a company, and I bust his shoes on a regular basis. Oh, you're working today? I thought you were like on the golf course, brokering a $20 deal on a golf course. Without sales, there's no revenue. And someday we're going to play that video about the one I talked about, the lap dance. It's a YouTube video, and it's a spoof of that courtroom scene in A Few Good Men. But sales drives revenue, and marketing drives sales. So it's all part of the necessary, I don't want to say evil, it's all part of the necessary chain to get the end result. If people don't like the marketing claim, they're not going to buy the product. They don't buy the product, there's no sales. There's no sales, we close factories. The people don't like the product. I bought my Honda because I am a big Honda guy. Well, parts of it are now laying on the highway. I'm a little irritated today. So marketing is there to drive a concept, and from soup to nuts, it's again, gray. Gray.
Right. Well, and that's why this topic is so important. So number one, you have high expectations for Honda. And the fact that it let you down, you're talking about it, right? You're letting people know. It's like, oh, that freaking Honda, you wouldn't believe what it did to me, right? I trusted Honda to not mess this up. And they did, right? If you were driving not a high reputation car and something like that happened, you'd be like, I kind of get what yeah, sure. I bought this car for 10 grand. What do I expect?
Right.
But your expectations change. And this discussion that we're having around this one, I want to make sure everybody gets this really clearly, is you're part of a team in your company. And you need to understand this position of how you're looking at it. You need to understand the other side. As Joe eloquently pointed out in this conversation, it's money, right? Revenue drives the company. We don't have a job if the company doesn't make money. So you need to understand what the other side of the company, the marketing, the sales, the CEO, what they're thinking. You need to think about these terms in terms of revenue. So for example, let's say a marketing claim. This is a phrase I use all the time. So write this down and use this. This helps. Is complexity reduces margin. What do I mean? If you're putting on non-GMO and gluten-free and allergy certified and SQF, and you've got every claim that you add to that packaging means more work, and it's not additive, it's logarithmic in the cost to the company. So how is that actually eating into your profit margin? You need to understand that.
The book, The Goal, should be a required reading for everybody in college, everybody graduating high school. And if you don't know the book, The Goal, go get it. It's an easy read. It's a fable. But the moral of the story is, and it changed how I operate businesses. I know about the theory of constraints and bottlenecks, and it helps with life stuff. If I see where the bottlenecks are in my life, I've got to either go around the bottleneck or pull it. I can't push it through the hole. It just won't fit. But what's the goal of every business? And because everybody on this call are a bunch of food safety nerds and weirdos. We're passionate about things that nobody else cares about. We say, what's the goal of our business? Oh, it's to produce safe, wholesome product. No, it's not. The goal of our business is to make money.
Yeah.
Okay? Because without money, we don't have jobs. And then we can't worry about making safe, wholesome food. So, my wife used to always tell me, see things from the other guy's perspective. And salespeople, while they may be salespeople, and I'm not knocking salespeople, they have a role, and their role is to sell the product that we're making. And without that, without that, we don't have the opportunity to make safe product. So
right. What we're doing in food safety is implied. Right. It has to be there, but we have to educate and teach people. So I found the book here on Amazon, and forgive me for the giganto link. I wasn't able to shorten it, but the book is called The Goal.
Eliyahu Goldratt, one of the greatest books ever written. And it was written back in the 70s, and it's still relevant today. It's in like its fourth or fifth, but the book just doesn't go away. It's in like its fifth or sixth printing by now.
Yep. The one I pulled up and linked here on Amazon, no affiliation, by the way, is the 40th anniversary edition. Yeah. So a lot of wisdom there for sure. So final topic. We're in the home stretch here. So, Joe, I'm very adamant about this. This is very important in companies. Food safety needs to report to senior management. If food safety doesn't have a seat at the senior management in the company, they're going to be ignored. They're going to be talked over, and they're not going to be able to manage food safety. And I think a lot of problems in company come from the fact that food safety reports somewhere down in the company in operations or something. It's a big problem.
Does it matter? If we've got acceptable levels of food safety culture in our facility, and we're hitting our KPIs, and we're getting those great audit scores, we're getting 98s on our audits, and we're getting the AA+. Woo! What difference does it make? We clearly, our audit scores reveal, and reflect our level of commitment. So who cares?
Well, that's good for the here and now, but in food safety, you should be concerned more about the future. So, okay, great. Things are working fine now, but you need to be thinking about the problems that are coming down the road. And you need to let senior management know as part of senior leadership that there's potential issues they need to be concerned about.
Worry about
How are you going to do that?
Why am I worried about the future? I'm worried about making product today.
Well, I want to continue making product. And so you have to, senior management's job is to be thinking 3 to 5 years out into the future. How can I do that buried in the operations group?
I'll worry about tomorrow's problems tomorrow. Right now, I got to worry about making this bread today and not killing anybody.
Very short-sighted. Very short-sighted.
That one hurt me to say. I'm not going to lie. You always give me the con side on the ones that truly go against the core of my soul.
Good. Yeah, I want to see you go.
The blood pressure rose. I got my arms folded and I'm squeezing them into my chest, so it reminds me to keep breathing. For food safety to not have a seat at the table should be criminal in today's world, and I think we've learned this. These things happen. The boar's heads and the blue ice cream and the PCA, these things happen. And if nothing good comes out of it, there ought to be some lessons learned. And certainly the lessons learned with Boar's Head, the lessons learned with Bluebell and Jensen and all of these massive outbreaks is that where was food safety's seat at the table? Yeah. Where was food safety's presence in the management meetings and the senior level meetings? Just made the news. I don't know if you heard it. A disgruntled employee from Disney was just convicted.
Yes.
He had hacked into I never heard this story and it blew me away. He had hacked into Disney's IT system and went in and changed the labels on some of the packaged foods that they sell. And he was erasing any information about allergens. So people were eating these. They didn't know there was peanut butter in it or tree nuts, and people were getting sick. And he was arrested and convicted to 7 years in prison and charged like $600,000 in fines, of which that money is going right back to Disney to pay for their attorneys. But, we live in a sick, warped, twisted world sometimes. And Disney is, over the years I have learned they're on target with stuff. They don't miss anything. And, and I'm sure that their IT system is on par with some of the finest in the world, and yet it happened. So what's the takeaway? With again, a good example is with Jensen and Bluebell. Where was food safety's seat at the big boys' table? Was it like Thanksgiving and the little kids had their own table, the adults had their own table, or was it all one table? As food safety needs to not cry wolf. Okay. And I think that tends to happen sometimes. And that tends to be why sometimes we're ignored. Because we always, if the sky is falling, well, okay, well, present your facts. You got to take emotion out of it. This is business. I'm not playing poker. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the analogy I use on this is, we're it's kind of a bad one because it ended in a disaster, but we're the lookout on the Titanic, right? We're the guy up front who's scanning for the icebergs. We're saying, hey, something's coming up that's not good here. We need to turn the ship a couple of degrees this way to avoid that problem. Because once it's on top of you, right, too late. It's done deal. You're going down. And part of this goes back to what we talk about here on the chat. Part of our job in food safety, and this gets back to all these conversations we've been having around food safety culture. What the hell is it? What does it mean? What does it look like? All these type of things. Our job in food safety is to be the conscience of the organization and say, okay, I understand why you're wanting to do these things from a marketing perspective or a sales perspective. Here's some things you need to think about. Because you come up against this all the time too, Joe, and this is one of my pet peeves. We never had a problem before, right? Is, okay, well, that's not a way to run your business. That's not the future. And to your point on the unenviable con position on that last one was, we're here to, you're just chicken little. No, part of our job is to educate and teach and look out far ahead to help the companies avoid those things. And again, this weaves through everything that we've talked about here today. You have to understand the position of the people you're talking with. You can't beat food safety into the CEO, right? To your point, Joe, you can't be the nag of, right? They're going to tune you out. Mm-hmm. They see you walking down the hall, they're just going to walk the other way because they don't want to talk with you anymore because you're just a pain in the butt.
Some really good comments came in here, and Cortland raises a good question. What happens about the consumer that, goes outside, cleans their chicken coop, cleans their duck coop, and then comes inside and cooks dinner? Didn't wash their hands. And I agree. And, here we are going through, again, all these flaming hoops to be sure that we're preparing food in our factories to be safe and legal foods, mm-hmm. right? And the end consumer drops the ball. Great comment.
We talked about that a little earlier. It's exactly, part of this gets back to that educational piece is don't go to the grocery store and buy your groceries and then drive around all day for 6 hours in 100-degree weather.
I don't care how cold your air conditioner is in your car. It's not keeping the milk at 40 degrees.
No. And then you wonder what happened.
And the
part
other
of this, and go ahead.
I was saying, and the other good point he raises that ISO requires quality to report into senior management. Well, so does SQF and BRC. And how effective is that?
Right.
The practitioner may be reporting in if senior management doesn't want to hear it.
Right. And so what does senior management mean? So plants will say, senior management means the plant manager. All my quality managers report to the plant manager. That's senior management for the facility. I'm done. Maybe. What about at corporate? Good. Yeah. So Kira's making a good point here too as well. Right. We are seen as roadblocks and not guide rails. Businesses don't want roadblocks. Well said.
That's that. And you know what? That should be like a slogan.
Mm-hmm. You should copyright that, Kira.
You should copyright that. Absolutely. We are seen as roadblocks and not. I'm gonna get that tattooed next weekend. We are seen as roadblocks and not guide rails.
Right here on your arm. So I mean, and again, and so Kira, this is a great way to end our chat here today. Is right. You need to not be seen as a roadblock. You need to be seen as a member of the team. You need to be seen as a valuable asset that's helping to your point, Joe, grow the company, grow the business, help it be successful, and protect the consumers along the way. Right. You're not in opposition. It's a with. You are working with the team. And you need to interact with the marketing people and the sales people and the ops team and R&D and procurement and senior. Everybody that touches food safety needs to understand their perspective and that you understand their perspective in the business. So the correct decisions for food safety and food quality can be made.
Yep.
Right? If not, you're going to fail.
Agreed 200%.
And with that, wow, this was fun. I hope everybody enjoyed this. I enjoyed this, Joe. You're the perfect person to do this with.
Exhausting. Like I'm trying, because I've been known to have an opinion or two about things. And taking some of these positions were hard because it goes against the core of what I believe in, but
right.
Why they call it acting, right?
Well, and again, it even though this may be personally distasteful to buckle down and see the other side, you got to do it. Absolutely. You got to do it. Yeah. So with that, guys, thanks. I hope, let me know in the comments here and send me an email or send Joe an email and let us know if you enjoyed this chat. If you did, we'll continue this concept and we'll kind of do this more in the chat as well too, because I enjoyed this. This was a ton of fun. So with that, everybody, we'll bring our chat to a close here for today. Thanks for joining us. We always appreciate it. And as usual, we'll be back here next week on LinkedIn and YouTube at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, where I'll bring another superstar in food safety like Joe onto the chat to have a conversation with you. And in the meantime, have a good weekend. Enjoy yourself. Get out in that nice weather, and we'll do it all again next week. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good weekend.